Here is how I passed a $200,000 funded Forex account. Today I'm going to be running through phase 1 and phase 2 and a couple of example trades of the build up and process of passing my $200,000 Forex funded account. If you're new around here, be sure to hit the subscribe button and leave this video a like. More videos similar to this are coming up again and including a lot of educational content for free. So let's get into the breakdown of phase 1. The $200,000 funded account challenge I took through a company called My Forex Funds. So there are two phases in the process of becoming a funded trader. So for phase 1 of the challenge, if you didn't already know, here are the rules and parameters of phase 1. Firstly, you have a max daily loss of 5%. So in any 24-hour period, you can only lose up to 5% of the capital, and this also includes floating equity in the account too. Your max overall loss is 12%. So throughout the first stage of the challenge, you can only lose 12% maximum capital. Phase 1 stretches over a period of 30 calendar days. And within this time frame, you need to reach 8% profit. Final one, which is the easiest, is to trade a minimum of 5 days. So phase 1 I started in January 2023. The first trade I actually took on this account was a loss. So I wasn't off to a particularly great start, but it's nothing too major. Any Forex trader knows that you can't win every single trade. There are losses along the way. So this trade opportunity arose at around 1 p.m. during the New York session on a Monday. Now I'll jump into the 4-hour time frame and break down my thoughts quickly. And you can see if you just look to the left of the charts, we had a 4-hour bullish breaker structure, which meant the overall swing bias for me on the 4-hour time frame was bullish. And then as price developed, we got two bearish internal breaker structures to the downside, reacted from an extreme demand zone, and then we pushed up with quite a lot of momentum. Now here I had highlighted a supply zone, which was an internal supply zone to this 4-hour range, which I would have been interested in looking for sells from. And obviously I actually did execute a sell from this area. But what I learned from this loss was that price here, the momentum was way too large. And we had an internal breaker structure to the upside as well, which meant the 4-hour swing bias and internal bias was aligned, both bullish. So selling from here was low probability and a trade I shouldn't have taken in hindsight. But when we have losses, there is always usually a lesson, and that was the main lesson that I took away from this trade. So now I'll move on to the 15-minute time frame to just break it down a little bit. So here you can see that price was closing above this 4-hour supply zone that I'd highlighted. However, we never got a 4-hour close above. To me, unless we get a close above, then the supply zone hasn't failed. So at this point now, I'm looking for a sign that price is going to reverse to the downside to get involved in a counter sell. So what I want to see in this scenario is a 15-minute internal breaker structure to the downside once a 4-hour supply or demand zone is held. In this case, has, and we got the bearish 15-minute internal breaker structure. So this left only one area where I could enter a sell from, and as you can see, we just went straight through the stop loss. So an annoying loss, but in a way it was a good one because it showed me a lesson that I needed to learn. So now I'll move on to the second trade, and this ended up being a winner, which was good. The 4-hour time frame remains the same. Swing bias is bullish, and you can see through the night before I executed this trade, we had switched bullish, and this bull rally left us with two potential demand zones to enter from, and I chose a lower one to enter from. And as you can see, price was pretty corrective, and then it shot up to my take profit zone. Now I think my take profit zone was actually a little bit lower than what's highlighted, but I was just trying to gauge an area where take profits could actually be extended further. I arrived at the decision to enter from this demand zone because there was no inducement here, and there was even a little bit of liquidity. So there was a lot of reason for price to retrace deeper than this zone, and it was quite obvious to me that this demand zone was going to fail. However, this one was a lot stronger because we have formed a demand chain here, and there is no inducement really below. So it made sense to take this trade for me, and at this point I was around halfway to passing the challenge. Okay, so here's our third and final trade that I executed. You can see it was a bit more choppy in terms of price action and also the change in swing bias really. You can see we temporarily shifted bearish and then we shifted back bullish in line with the 4-hour time frame. At this point it was still bullish. And we had a pretty strong bearish push to the downside. Reacted from a 15-minute demand zone here. I had no buy limit from here because it was quite an impulsive retracement to the downside. When I see something like this, I'd rather take a reconfirmed entry. So as you can see, internal had switched bullish again through the night. I trade from 7 a.m. so Price was about up here, and this left a nice demand zone for me to enter from. Because of the size of the zone, I entered from what I call the EQ, or the midpoint of the demand zone, got tagged in, and we hit 5R. You can see we did head quite a bit further to the upside, but that's how it is sometimes. My data has told me the best time to take my profits, and that was at this point here. And at the end of the day, this was the final trade needed to pass phase one. So I actually closed out earlier than my profit target. I think I closed it on the same day at this peak point here, because that was enough for me to pass phase one. And the first phase was done in technically 19 days. So now we move on to phase two. The rules do slightly differ. During phase two, you get 60 days to complete the challenge instead of 30, so double the time, and your profit target is reduced from 8% to 5%. So this evaluation phase is obviously a little bit easier, but at this point I was still revising my trade plan a little bit in terms of whether I just fully go for reconfirm entries or I stick with just following the trend as I see. And for me, it's become quite a big goal to become funded. After passing the first phase in 20 days, I'd waited 10 days to start the new month because I figured that makes most sense to start phase two during the start of a new month. And I think I grew a little impatient and perhaps a little bit excited as well to just try and get phase two boxed off and get my hands on the funded capital. Obviously I've learned from this, and when I took a couple of losses after it, I'd figured that I was just being impatient and trying to force trades too much, which was not something I usually do, but funding is new to me, so I suppose it can change how you trade a little bit as when you're not used to the environment. But I knew I had to nip that in the bud quick, especially if I wanted to pass the challenge, keep the account profitable thereafter. Because there was a few trades during this time, basically overall during the phase two, I took 5 trades. 2 of them were winners and 3 were losses. So it was a 40% strike rate as opposed to 66. 40% is still decent, really, especially with my method. Every winner is worth 5 losses. So, a 40% strike rate is more than okay. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to break down the winning trade that I executed to get me across the finish line for phase 2 and get access to the funded account. Okay, so as you can see here, price again was bullish still, and it was bullish on the 4-hour time frame too. So at this point, the 4-hour was bullish, and so was the 15-minute. The 15-minute had retraced to the downside, and you could see it was forming a bullish internal chain. You'll notice this trade came quite close to my stop loss, in fact, very close. And I've calculated my stop loss as a fixed size. So basically from the data I've gathered over the years, I've calculated exactly where I should put my stop loss to suit me best. And as you can see here, it paid off well. The thing to note, my personal account, I use a raw spread account. So on the Euro US dollar, it's basically zero spread, sometimes 0.1 pips. So we were about 0.4 pips off my stop loss here. And with a raw spread, it wouldn't have hit my stop loss. Now on a funded account, you can have sort of between 0.3 and 0.6 of a pip on the Euro USD pair. Rarely 0.6, usually around 0.5 I've noticed. Naturally, I add 0.5 pips onto my stop loss, but the stop loss shown here is actually the smaller stop loss that I use on my personal account. So this is how I remained in it on the funded account too. So during this recent bullish rally, you can see one main demand zone that price would probably retrace to before seeing a reaction from. Now, what I hadn't realised at the time was this wick did not mitigate this candle here. So there was actually reason for price to interact around this level. Fortunately, it didn't go any deeper than that, and it just tapped into where this candle was, and then we started to shift to the upside again. And here we can see the following day, we had a nice liquidity grabbed all the liquidity from the Asian session, and that's what rallied us to the upside to pass the account. So that concludes the breakdown of phase 1 and phase 2 of the $200,000 My Forex Funds evaluation challenge. So I hope this gave a good insight as to how I passed the account and sort of the realistic approach in a funded challenge. It's not going to be a case of you have a good month beforehand, then you go into the trade expecting complete winners or to pass it in half the time doable. Take your time and don't force any trades. As you can see in phase 2, my strike rate dropped because I was trying to force trades, and it took like a further 15-20 days after my last loss to come across the winner that took me across the line. So that should be the biggest takeaway from this video really, is if you are going for a funded challenge, make sure you just take your time and stick to your plan. No need to rush. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to subscribe. I will be doing future videos again now on this channel. I took a little break because I moved down to London, and it was quite a long process to get everything sorted what I wanted to take down. We were only here for a temporary time, so it was quite difficult trying to sort somewhere to stay as well. Now I'm a bit more settled down here. I'll start videos again. Thanks for watching.